He told her to leave his party, so she whispered 4 words. And I was folding laundry when my daughter called. Just a normal Tuesday morning. The kind where the sun comes through the kitchen window and hits the tile floor in that warm Arizona way that makes you think everything is exactly where it should be. I had my husband's shirts laid out on the bed, the good ones for his golf days. I was smoothing the collars and thinking about what to make for dinner when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Beth, my oldest, my only daughter. The one I held in my arms for 9 months, and then 18 years, and then every single day after that, because that is what mothers do. We never stop holding them, even when they are 42 years old with 3 children of her own and a house in Scottsdale that cost more than the home I grew up in on the south side of Phoenix. She sounded happy, that bright voice she uses when she wants something. I know that voice better than I know my own heartbeat. "Mom," she said, "can you come over this afternoon? The kids miss you. Derek is grilling steaks." I said, "Of course, honey, I will be there around 4. That was the last normal conversation I ever had with my daughter, the last time I heard her voice without hearing the lie underneath it. Because that afternoon changed everything. That afternoon ripped the floor out from under my life and left me standing in a hole I did not even know existed. Let me start from the beginning, or what I thought was the beginning. I am 71 years old. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Marge. I have been married to Frank for 46 years. We met at a diner in Tempe in 1978. He was a construction foreman with calloused hands and a smile that made me forget my own name. I was a waitress with a 2-year-old son named Tommy from a marriage that lasted less time than it took to cook a pot roast. Frank did not care about any of that. He loved Tommy like his own from day one. He gave that boy his last name before Tommy started kindergarten. We bought a little house in Mesa with a lemon tree in the back and a fence that needed painting every spring. Frank worked 60-hour weeks. I stayed home with Tommy, and then Beth came along in 1982, and suddenly our small house felt like the only place in the world that mattered. I remember those years like a movie I have watched 1,000 times. Tommy learning to ride a bike on the sidewalk out front. Frank holding Beth up to see the fireworks on the 4th of July. Sunday dinners with meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and the radio playing country songs in the background. We were not rich, we were not special, but we were together, and that was enough for me. I thought it was enough for all of us. Tommy grew up and went to community college, and then transferred to Arizona State. He became an accountant, quiet and steady like his father. He married a woman named Jenna, who I loved from the moment I met her, because she laughed at all of Frank's terrible jokes, and she called me every Tuesday just to check in. They had 2 boys, my grandsons, Caleb and Owen. They are 17 and 15 now. They barely look at me when I see them at Christmas, but that is later. That is after the blood. Beth was different from the start. She was fire. She was beautiful and loud and impossible to ignore. She got straight A's without trying. She had boyfriends lining up in high school. She went to the University of Arizona and came back with a business degree and a plan to conquer the world. She met Derek at a real estate conference in 2005. He was tall and polished, and his father owned a development company in Paradise Valley. Beth fell hard. I watched it happen, like a storm rolling across the desert, fast and unstoppable. Frank did not like Derek at first. Too smooth, he said. Too many smiles that do not reach his eyes. But I told Frank he was being protective, that Beth was a grown woman, that Derek came from money and he treated her well, and what more could a mother want for her daughter? So we smiled at the engagement party. We clapped at the wedding. We watched them buy a 4-bedroom house in the best part of Scottsdale and fill it with furniture that cost more than Frank's truck. And then the grandchildren came. First Lily, then Sophie, then little Frank Jr., named after his grandfather, who cried like a baby when they told us the name. Beth asked me to help with the kids. Just 2 days a week, she said. Just to give the nanny a break, she said. I was 64 then, retired from the school cafeteria job I had taken after the kids grew up. Frank was still working part-time because he did not know what to do with himself if he was not building something. I said yes. Of course I said yes. She was my daughter. Those were my grandchildren. What kind of grandmother would I be if I said no? For 4 years, I drove from Mesa to Scottsdale every Tuesday and Thursday, 45 minutes each way. I packed snacks and diapers and coloring books. I helped Lily with her reading. I taught Sophie how to braid hair. I held little Frank Jr. while he napped on my chest, and I smelled his baby smell, and I thought, this is what I was put on this earth to do. Beth never paid me. I did not expect her to. She was my daughter. But sometimes she would mention how expensive the nanny was, how Derek was stressed about cash flow, even though they went to Cabo twice a year and Beth drove a brand new Range Rover. I did not say anything. I just kept showing up. And then Frank got sick. It was his heart. The doctor said it had been coming for years, the long hours and the red meat and the stress of running a crew through the Arizona summers. Frank had a heart attack in the garage while he was looking for his tape measure. I found him on the concrete floor with his eyes open and his hand pressed to his chest, like he was trying to hold himself together. The ambulance came, the hospital, the surgery, the weeks of recovery in a bed that smelled like hand sanitizer and fear. Beth came to visit twice. Derek never came. Tommy came every single day after work. He sat with me in the waiting room. He brought me coffee from the machine that always tasted like burned plastic. He held my hand when the doctors came out with the same worried expression every time. Frank survived, but he was not the same. His body was weaker. His mind was slower. He could not work anymore. The doctor said he needed full-time care, someone to help him with his medications, someone to drive him to appointments, someone to make sure he did not fall in the shower. I quit my part-time job at the church thrift store. I became his nurse, his cook, his driver, his memory when his own started to slip. It was hard. Some days I cried in the bathroom so he would not hear me. Some nights I lay awake listening to his breathing and praying it would not stop. But I never complained. Not to him, not to the kids. Because that is what a wife does. That is what a mother does. You hold everything together, even when your own hands are shaking. Beth stopped calling as much. At first I thought she was busy. The kids had soccer and dance and piano. Derek had deals falling apart and deals coming together. I understood. I told myself I understood. But then the calls went from once a week to once a month. The visits went from every Sunday to every other Sunday, to not at all. I would text her pictures of the boys or ask about Lily's school play, and she would reply with a thumbs up emoji or a short sentence that felt like a door closing. Tommy noticed. He asked me if Beth had said something to upset me. I said no. I said she was just busy. I said she loved me. I believed it. I had to believe it. Frank got worse. The doctor said he needed to be in a facility, a place with nurses around the clock, a place with physical therapy and proper nutrition and a bed that could be raised and lowered at the push of a button. I thought it for 6 months. I thought I could do it myself. I was wrong. One night, Frank fell in the hallway trying to get to the bathroom. I could not lift him. I sat on the floor next to him for 2 hours until Tommy came over and found us there. Tommy called the ambulance himself. He looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "Mom, you cannot do this alone." So we put Frank in a care home in Chandler. A nice place. Bright hallways, a garden in the back with roses that someone actually watered. The social worker told me it would cost $4,000 a month. Frank's pension covered some of it. Social Security covered some of it. I had our savings. The money we had put away for 40 years. The money that was supposed to be for our old age together. I told myself it was fine. I told myself this was what the money was for, but then the savings started to run out. I called Tommy first. He offered to help, but I knew he could not afford it. He and Jenna had their own bills. Caleb was talking about college. Owen needed braces. I said, "No, baby, I will figure it out." Then I called Beth. She sounded annoyed when she answered, like I had interrupted something important. I told her about the money, about the care home bills piling up, about how I had maybe 6 months left before I would have to sell the house. Beth was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Mom, we need to talk about something." Her voice was different, careful, like she was reading from a script she had practiced in the car on the way over. She said Derek had been looking at our finances, the house in Mesa. The property values in that neighborhood had gone up because of the new developments. She said we could sell the house and use the money for Dad's care. She said I could move into their guest house in Scottsdale, the little casita behind the main house. I would have my own space. I would be close to the grandkids. It would be perfect. I said, "What about the house? Our house, the one with the lemon tree, The one where Tommy learned to ride a bike and Beth took her first steps. The one where Frank and I had spent 46 years building a life. Beth said, "Mom, it is just a house. Dad needs care. You need help. Let us take care of you for once." She had never said anything like that before. Let us take care of you. Those words undid me. I started crying on the phone. Beth cried too. For a moment, she was my little girl again. The one who used to crawl into my bed after a nightmare. The one who held my hand at her father's hospital bedside. I said yes. I said yes because I trusted her, because she was my daughter, because I thought the worst thing in the world was running out of money and losing Frank to a facility I could not afford. I did not know that the worst thing was still coming. We sold the house in 3 weeks. The market was hot. A young couple with a baby on the way paid cash, $320,000. After the realtor fees and the closing costs and the payoff of the small mortgage we had taken out years ago to fix the roof, there was $270,000 left. Beth said she would hold the money in an account for me. She said it would be easier that way. She said Derek had a financial advisor who could help it grow so it would last longer for Dad's care. I signed papers. I do not even remember what they said. Beth put them in front of me with a pen and a smile, and I signed because I trusted her. I moved into the casita in August. It was small but nice. A bedroom, a bathroom, a little kitchenette with a mini fridge and a microwave. The air conditioning worked. There was a window that faced the pool. I hung a picture of Frank on the wall and a picture of the kids from a vacation we took in Sedona when they were teenagers. I told myself I would be okay. For a while, I was okay. I saw the grandkids every day. Lily would come knock on my door after school and tell me about her day. Sophie would bring me drawings she made in art class. Little Frank Jr. would run into my arms and call me Nana, and I felt like my heart was going to burst. Beth was different, though. She was cold. Not mean exactly, but distant. She would say hello in the morning and then disappear into her own world. Derek barely looked at me. He would walk past the casita like it was not even there. Sometimes he would have friends over for pool parties, and nobody would invite me to join. I would sit at my little window and watch them laugh and drink and splash in the water, and I felt like a ghost in my own family. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself they were busy. I told myself to be grateful. Frank died in November. It was quiet. He had another heart attack in his sleep. The care home called me at 4 a.m. I drove to Chandler in my pajamas. I held his hand while the doctor told me there was nothing they could have done. His hand was still warm. That is what I remember most. How warm his hand was, even though he was gone. Beth came to the funeral. She wore black and cried in the right places. Tommy stood next to me the whole time with his arm around my shoulder. After the service, we had a small reception at a restaurant near the care home. People brought casseroles and said things like, "He is in a better place, and at least he is not suffering anymore." I did not say anything. I just nodded and drank coffee that tasted like nothing. After Frank died, I expected things to change. I thought Beth would want me around more, to help with the kids, to be a grandmother, to be family. But the opposite happened. The visits from Lily stopped. Sophie stopped knocking on my door. Little Frank Jr. would wave at me from across the pool, but he never came running anymore. I asked Beth about it. She said the kids were busy. She said Lily had a lot of homework. She said Sophie was going through a phase. She said I should not take it personally. But I did take it personally, because I was living in their backyard. I could see them through the window. I could see Lily playing on her iPad on the couch. I could see Sophie jumping on the trampoline. I could see little Frank Jr. splashing in the pool. They were not busy. They were just not allowed to come see me. One night, I overheard Derek on the phone. He was in the backyard near my window. He did not know I could hear him. He was talking to someone about money, about investments, about a property in Flagstaff that was going to double in value. And then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. He said, "The old lady is not going to be a problem. Beth has power of attorney. The money is already in our name." I sat on my bed for an hour. I did not move. I did not cry. I just sat there with my hands in my lap and my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. The next morning, I called Tommy. I told him what I had heard. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Tommy said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." He said Beth had called him a few months ago. She told him she was taking over my finances. She said I was not capable of managing things on my own. She said the doctor had signed something, a form, a document that gave her control over my bank accounts and my medical decisions, and my retirement money. Tommy said he did not believe her. He said he asked to see the documents. Beth told him it was none of his business. She told him to stay out of it. She said if he tried to interfere, she would make sure he never saw the kids again. His kids, Caleb and Owen. Beth said she would tell them things, lies, about Tommy, about his drinking, about his temper, things that were not true. Tommy backed down. He told me he was sorry. He said he should have told me sooner. He said he was scared of what Beth would do. I understood. I was scared too, but I was also angry. The kind of angry that does not shake or cry or scream. The kind of angry that sits very still and plans. I called a lawyer the next day, an old friend of Frank's named Paul, who helped us buy the house back in 1980. Paul was retired, but he listened to me on the phone for an hour. He told me to get copies of everything I had signed, the papers from the house sale, the bank statements, any text messages or emails from Beth about the money. I started looking. I went through the small desk in my casita. I found copies of some things, but not others. I asked Beth for the bank statements. She said she would get them to me. She never did. I asked again. She said I was being paranoid. She said the money was safe. She said I should focus on my grief and let her handle the rest. I did not let it go. I started taking notes. Every time Beth said something about money, I wrote it down. Every time Derek looked at me with those cold eyes, I wrote that down too. I kept a little notebook hidden under my mattress. It became my Bible, my confession, my evidence. Then one day in February, I found the document. Beth had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower. The kids were at school. Derek was at work. I walked into the house to get a glass of water, and there it was. The screen was lit up with an email from Derek to their financial advisor. The subject line said, "Trust distribution." I read it. I read every word. Derek had written that the funds from the sale of my house had been transferred into a joint trust. Beth and Derek were the trustees. I was listed as a beneficiary, but the fine print said distributions could only be made at the discretion of the trustees. In other words, they controlled everything. I could not touch the money without their permission. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the date. The document had been signed 3 weeks before Frank died. 3 weeks before I even knew Frank was going to die. Beth had pushed me to sign it when I was exhausted and grieving and not thinking clearly. She had told me it was for Frank's care, but Frank was still alive when I signed it, and the document said nothing about Frank's care. It said everything about Beth and Derek taking control of my life savings. I printed the email. I folded it into my pocket. I walked back to the casita and closed the door and sat on my bed and cried until my face was raw. That night I called Paul, the lawyer, again. He said he would come out of retirement to help me. He said what Beth and Derek did was illegal. It was financial elder abuse. It was fraud. It was theft. He said we could sue them. I did not want to sue my own daughter. That is the part that people do not understand. Even after everything, even after the lies and the manipulation and the cold way she looked at me like I was a problem to be managed, I still loved her. I still remembered holding her in the hospital room when she was born. I still remembered the way she said mama for the first time. I still remembered all of it. But I also remembered Frank. I remembered how hard he worked for that money. I remembered the 46 years of early mornings and late nights and skipped vacations because we were saving for retirement. I remembered him saying, "We are building something, Marge, something for us and for the kids." He did not mean for it to be stolen, so I told Paul to move forward. He sent a letter to Beth and Derek demanding an accounting of the trust funds. He gave them 30 days to respond. Beth showed up at my door the next morning. She was furious. Her face was red, her hands were shaking. She did not even say hello. She said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" She said I was betraying the family. She said I was being manipulated by Tommy because he was jealous of her success. She said I was an ungrateful old woman who did not appreciate everything she had done for me. I sat on my little bed and listened. I did not interrupt. I let her say everything she needed to say. When she was finished, I looked at her, and I said, "Beth, I just want my money back. I want to pay for a small apartment and live my life. I do not want to fight with you. I just want what is mine." She laughed. She actually laughed. She said, "Mom, you do not have anything. The money is gone. We used it for investments, for the kids' school, for a new car for Derek, for a vacation home in Sedona that we are closing on next month." She said it like it was nothing, like she was telling me about a grocery list. I asked how much was left. She shrugged. She said maybe 50,000, maybe less. She said she would have to check with the financial advisor. $270,000 gone, spent on cars and vacations and a house I would never be allowed to visit. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just nodded and said, "Okay, Beth, thank you for telling me the truth." She looked confused. She expected a fight. She expected tears and yelling and drama. But I gave her nothing, because I realized in that moment that she was not my daughter anymore. She was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. The little girl who used to hold my hand was gone. She had been replaced by someone cold and calculating and cruel. Beth told me I had 30 days to move out of the casita. She said Derek did not want me there anymore. She said my presence was causing stress for the family. She said the kids were confused by all the drama. I packed my things that night. I did not have much. Clothes, pictures, Frank's wedding ring, the little notebook I had been keeping under my mattress. I called Tommy and he came to get me at midnight. He drove me to a Motel 6 near the airport. The room smelled like cigarettes and regret, but it was mine. Beth could not take it away from me. The lawsuit took 2 years. 2 years of depositions and court dates and lawyers' bills that ate up the little money I had left. Tommy paid for some of it. Jenna started a GoFundMe that raised $11,000 from people who heard my story on a local news segment. I sold my wedding ring. I sold Frank's tools. I sold everything I had left to keep fighting. Beth and Derek hired a shark of a lawyer, a woman in an expensive suit who looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. They claimed I had signed the documents willingly. They claimed I was of sound mind. They claimed I had given Beth power of attorney because I wanted her to manage my affairs. They almost won. The judge was an old man who seemed tired of family disputes. He told us to settle. He said a trial would cost more than the money left to fight over. So we settled. Beth and Derek agreed to give me $75,000. No admission of guilt, no apology, just a check and a piece of paper saying I would not talk to the media anymore. $75,000, less than a third of what they stole. But I took it because I had nothing left. No energy, no fight, no hope. I moved into a small apartment in Glendale, 1 bedroom, beige walls, a parking lot view. The neighbors are loud at night and the air conditioner sounds like a dying animal, but it is mine. I pay the rent with the settlement money and Social Security and the small pension I get from the school cafeteria. Tommy visits every Sunday. He brings groceries and fixes things that break and sits with me while we watch old movies on the TV that only gets 3 channels. Jenna calls every morning to check on me. Caleb and Owen come sometimes. They are awkward and quiet, but they hug me when they leave, and that is enough. Beth does not call. She does not text. She blocked my number after the settlement. I found out through Tommy that she and Derek moved to the Sedona house full-time. The kids go to a private school up there. Lily is in high school now. Sophie is on a competitive dance team. Little Frank Jr. plays football. I have not seen them in over a year. Sometimes I drive up to Sedona, not to see them, just to be close. I park near the school and watch the kids come out at dismissal. I look for Lily's blonde hair, Sophie's pink backpack, the way little Frank Jr. runs to the car with his arms out like he is flying. I have seen them twice. Lily looked right at me once. I think she recognized me. I think she almost waved. But then a woman in a black SUV pulled up and Lily got in and they drove away. Maybe someday they will find me. Maybe they will want to know their grandmother. Maybe Beth will have a change of heart and call and say she is sorry and ask for forgiveness. But I am not waiting. I am 71 years old. I have lost my husband. I have lost my house. I have lost my daughter. I have lost the money that was supposed to carry me through my last years. But I have not lost myself. Not completely. I get up every morning. I make coffee in a pot that is too big for one person. I water this single plant on my windowsill. I watch the sun come up over the parking lot and I think about Frank. I think about the lemon tree. I think about the way he used to hold my hand in the car when we were young and had no idea what was coming. And then I go on with my day, because that is what you do. You keep going even when the people you love most have turned into strangers. You keep going because stopping is not an option.
I am Margaret. I am 71 years old. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a widow. I am a woman who trusted her daughter and paid the price. And I am still here.